let's set the timer for 8 minutes for our next
Oh,
segment on Trump revoking emergency abortion protections. Now, you are traveling, so I will take on the 8 minute clock
Nadine,
part
I
of
was going to
this.
say I forgot to travel with my little timer. So thank you for catching
I
that.
got you. I got you.
Thank you.
Let's
You are so good
we
to me.
we do not have to worry. And so for anyone who hasn't been following in all of this, uh, oh, one last thing. If your child punched you in the eye and gave you a black eye, that's probably the last story you'd tell. Okay,
Oh, yeah, to
onward.
protect the child. Yeah.
Right. In a quietly devastating move, the Trump administration has rescinded federal protections for emergency abortion care, even in life-saving situations. So that federal guidance um, had required hospitals to provide stabilizing care, including abortion, when necessary to save a patient's life. And now it is gone. Hospitals in anti-abortion states are left with no clear federal mandate. Doctors are unsure whether providing life-saving care could get them sued or, worse, facing charges, facing imprisonment. And we're already seeing the consequences. Women forced to wait until they were septic, pregnancies terminated too late to prevent permanent damage. And this isn't just cruel, it's really calculated. And it's happening in an administration where cruelty is their hallmark. Lisa, this is something that you have followed closely. What do you make of it? What do you make of the timing of it? Is this just more red meat for the base so they can continue to steal behind the scenes, or what should we be thinking about this?
Well, it was inevitable in the sense that we thought for sure this administration would do this. But, I think there are important pieces of the backstory that people need to understand. Beyond the top line, which, as you put, Nadine, is people's lives being harmed, some people dying as a result of not having access to emergency rooms, that the access that this law was trying to protect. EMTALA, the law at stake, is a measure that was actually adopted in the Reagan administration, and it was adopted because there was dumping of patients going on because of the predatory nature of healthcare, the health industry, or the predatory nature of this industry in America. Was that in the 1980s there were people who would come to the emergency room seeking care, they couldn't afford the care, and hospitals would dump them, not allow them to come in. And so in a bipartisan effort, this law was passed to make sure that if someone came to emergency room and they needed emergency treatment not just to save their life, but for their health, to protect their health, that hospitals could not turn them away. And so what happened after the terrible decision of the captured Supreme Court, the Dobbs decision in summer of 2022, that 6-3 decision in which the Republicans allowed this ban on abortion, early abortion, to take place, to effectively ban abortion and pave the way for other states to either have their bans go into effect or have new bans go into effect. Over the next 6 months, the Biden administration looked at ways to protect women's health, to protect the health of people who are pregnant, who need treatment, but live in a state that has sought to ban abortion. And so it interpreted that EMTALA law to include coverage for women seeking help, when they're bleeding, when they are, facing a miscarriage, or the like. And that was fought immediately by right-wing controlled states. And so you saw Idaho, in particular, step up to try to stop EMTALA from being applied to protect pregnant women in Idaho. Now, Idaho has had just an extraordinary, it's just been a devastating situation since Dobbs, because OBGYNs in that state have left the state because they fear that they cannot provide treatment to women facing high-risk pregnancies, women who may, end up needing an abortion, at any time in their pregnancy, basically. And so there's been this decline in access to healthcare, which means that the emergency rooms are the place of only resort, not just last resort, but only resort for people in that state who are facing a medical crisis. But there was Idaho that had just ejected a longstanding Republican attorney general and replaced it with one of the original House founders of the so-called Freedom Caucus. who came in to be the attorney general in Idaho with the help of sort of Leo's RAGA, the Leonard Leo Republican Attorney General Association operation, to try to get their anti-abortion people holding the key levers in these states. Of course, that dude, even though he was a lawyer and a member of the House, didn't want to litigate that or didn't want to have it go in-house, and so hired Alliance Defending Freedom, the group that orchestrated the Dobbs decision, to outsource the litigation to them, who signed the document, but the wife of Josh Hawley. So Aaron Hawley, who orchestrated the scheme to overturn Roe, the litigation scheme, not just the broader scheme that Leo's been after, she signed the documents to actually have ADF litigate on behalf of Idaho. They took the case, to the federal district court, and then it was pending before the Ninth Circuit. But the U.S. Supreme Court, the right-wing judge of the Supreme Court, decided they wanted to take the case away from the lower court before it had ruled. And so they took the case up during the 2023-2024 cycle. And then it was like they realized, wait, we actually don't want to issue a decision overturning EMTALA during a presidential election year, which could further enrage voters, like happened in the 2022 midterms. And so, and there was this chance that perhaps the next president would be Trump, and he could just take care of it for them. And so midway through the process of hearing this case, the Supreme Court, the Republican Supreme Court, decided, oh, wait, we actually shouldn't have done this improvident thing and taken this case ahead of schedule. We don't need to issue a ruling on this and let the American people get reinvigorated on abortion. We're going to kick it back to the Ninth Circuit. So it got kicked back last year in the summer of 2024, basically a year ago. And then meanwhile, John Roberts was orchestrating the immunity decision to pave the way for Trump's return to power. And lo and behold, Trump returns to power, and the court doesn't have to get its hands dirty with destroying access to emergency medical care. It can let the Trump administration do that, and that's what the Trump administration just did in this edict. And that is part of a piece. So basically, the court has done the same on guns. They took a duck on dealing with guns because, they don't have to get their hands dirty on that. They can just leave that to the Trump administration. This is part of sort of John Roberts as a politician, really trying to maneuver the court in order, I think, to help his side. And that's actually the thesis of my new book, which is called Without Precedent, which is, available now and coming soon. But even if it weren't the topic of my book, it would be the topic of my conversation, because what we're seeing in this country is the direct result of the capture of the U.S. Supreme Court. The reason why EMTALA matters, why it was important to protect people's health, was because this U.S. Supreme Court, the Roberts Court, put the lives of millions of Americans at risk by allowing these extreme anti-abortion measures in the states to go into effect.
Whew. You just laid it out. No, that was beautiful. And if folks haven't had a chance, you definitely check out in the comments. You'll see a link to Lisa's new book coming out, hot off the press.